Scold's bridle, an item invented in the 1500s. An iron mask that tightly clung to the head was placed on women as a punishment for rude chatter and arguments. It was impossible to speak while wearing it. A bell was attached on top to attract attention. Prostitute Elizabeth Brown received 7 years in prison for strangling a sailor during BDSM play. Scotland, early 20th century. A tradition of American military sailors. When crossing the equator for the first time, newcomers had to adopt this interesting pose. 1944. Jubilee visitor at an American POW camp, April 20th, 1945. Republicans fight Democrats in a snowball fight at the Capitol, USA, 1921. Messengers run out of the White House. The war has begun. USA, December 7th, 1941. Evacuation of residents from Bikini Atoll for nuclear tests, 1946. Anal plugs were originally sold as miraculous remedies for headaches, pimples, and mental disorders. A slave in restraints designed to prevent escape. The collar prevented the slave from squeezing through narrow openings, such as a window. I am proud of my gay son, New York, 1974. A license for prostitution, United Kingdom, 1876. Integrating black students will turn schools into jungles, into racial jungles, said a young Joe Biden in 1977. 3 years of war between these portraits. Colleagues at the bedside of Catherine Wolfe Donahue, who was dying of a tumor and had lost all her teeth. USA, 1938. The girls were engaged in hand-painting glowing watch faces with radium-based paint. Factory management knew about the dangers of radium, but did not warn their workers. A priest reads prayers over the bodies of Titanic victims aboard a British ship, North Atlantic, 1912. Shocked Soviet soldiers stand near a large pile of human ashes at the Majdanek concentration camp in 1944. People fight for books, Plovdiv, Bulgaria, 1980. Group school photo, Austria, 1899. In the center of the back row, 10-year-old Adolf Hitler. The Guinness World Record for childbirth belongs to a Russian peasant woman living 200 years ago. Fyodor Vasiliev's wife gave birth 69 children in 27 pregnancies. She had twins 16 times, triplets 7 times, and quadruplets 4 times. To prevent forest fires, Canadians decided not to rely on a simple warning sign. Instead, they placed a gallows with a cigarette hanging from it in the park. The sign reads, "Anyone who throws a cigarette here will also be hanged." The architect of the Auschwitz concentration camp, Rudolf Höss, shortly before he was executed. Chief Ranger Sam Woodring stands next to a house made of deer antlers in Yellowstone National Park, USA, 1928. King Alexander I of Yugoslavia refused to participate in any public events on Tuesdays, as 3 members of his family died on that day of the week. Eventually, he decided to put an end to this silly superstition. On one Tuesday, he made an official visit to Marseille and was shot by a terrorist. National Headstand Week, USA, 1940. Democratically elected President Salvador Allende just seconds before his death, during a military coup at the presidential palace. Chile, 1973. John Kennedy just minutes before he was killed, 1963. The director of the Belgrade Zoo persuades a runaway chimpanzee named Sammy to return to the zoo, 1988. In 1976, pilot Vladimir Serkov directed a plane without passengers into a 5-story apartment building. The building was home to Serkov's wife, who had recently left him and taken their child. Over the past 30 years, at least 44 pilots in the USA have attempted suicide by deliberately crashing their planes into the ground. Most of them were struggling with breakups with girlfriends or wives. An Iraqi man celebrates on top of a burning American Army Hummer in northern Baghdad, Iraq, 2004. The Black Widow, Bella Sorensen Guinness, a female serial killer who killed for pleasure and greed. She is known to have buried 42 husbands and accumulated more than $250,000. The Black Widow ended her life tragically. Her body was found in a forest. In the apartment of the victim, found with multiple stab wounds, serial killer William Hirons left a message on the wall written in red lipstick. "Please catch me before I kill again. I can't control myself." FBI photo montage created in 1945 in case Hitler tried to escape by changing his appearance. Russian roads meet German vehicles, USSR, 1941. A German motorcyclist on Russian roads, 1941. Police used tear gas during riots in the illegal settlement of Rotterdam, South Africa. People are protesting the destruction of their homes, 1977. Lumberjacks of the past. Safety standards were unimpressive. Aloysia Veit, Hitler's cousin. She ended up in a mental asylum with psychosis. Later, she was sent to a gas chamber as a mentally ill person. According to Nazi ideology, the extermination of mentally ill individuals was meant to improve the mental health of the nation. A student strike, London, 1972. 10,000 London students marched against tasteless lunches, corporal punishment, and uniforms. Although the protests were suppressed and the ringleaders punished, corporal punishment was soon banned. However, uniforms remain mandatory in more than 90% of schools to this day. The surrender of the Japanese naval base Kurihara, located on the island of Honshu, 1945. A Japanese man hands his sword to an American with a severe violation of sword etiquette. The hilt under the right arm, and the sharp blade facing forward. From the Japanese perspective, he is deeply insulting the American. The American doesn't care, and isn't even aware. Workers lay a wooden water pipe east of Lewiston, Idaho, 1891. The pioneer of the automobile radio was Alfred Greb, who had to install a large antenna shaped like a clothes dryer on the bumpers around 1919. A crowd tries to overturn a car with a black family during racial riots in the city of Clinton, USA, 1956. Disabled activists leave their wheelchairs and crawl up the 83 steps of the U.S. Capitol, demanding the passage of disability rights legislation. March 12, 1990. The Strangler, Sakhalin, 1903. A woman could strangle a man if she caught him cheating, but not all women had enough strength. Thus, the profession of stranglers emerged. Let's be friends. This was Adolf Hitler's appeal to the global community, 1936. U.S. President Lyndon Johnson's limousine covered in paint packets during protests against the Vietnam War, 1966. In 1974, North Korea ordered 1,000 Volvo cars from Sweden. The cars were shipped, but North Korea simply never paid for them. The bill remains unpaid to this day, making it the largest car theft in history. Geisha Delivery Service, Japan, 1901. Bandits Roost, the most dangerous street in New York, 1888. An American cartoon from 1964, Russia and China dig a grave for the USA. Owen Baggett, the pilot who shot down an enemy plane with a pistol by shooting the pilot in the head while ejecting via parachute. Monumental stone coins used by the people of Japan. They are still used as currency on the island of Palau. Rally for abortion legalization, Italy, 1975. When Columbus discovered America, this continent was densely populated. 90 million people lived here, or about 1/3 of the world's population. But the colonizers destroyed half of the population. Martin Luther King was arrested for demanding service in a whites-only restaurant, Florida, 1964. We Want Beer, Women's Protest for the Repeal of Prohibition, USA, 1933. The First Cryopreservation of a Human Being, USA, 1967. Humanity had long sought a way to immortality, and in the progressive 1960s, it created the technology to freeze a deceased person in hopes of preventing decomposition, with the hope of reviving them in the future. The first person to undergo cryopreservation was James Bedford, who died in 1967 at the age of 73. Feminist Ellen Wagner stands beside 350,000 signatures demanding women's right to vote. Sweden, 1914. Even in the distant 19th century, cats were memes. Jews arrested after Kristallnacht, brought to the German concentration camp Buchenwald, 1938. Epidemic of encephalitis lethargica, also known as sleeping sickness. One of the strangest diseases in the history of medicine. People infected with it constantly wanted to sleep and often didn't wake up. The mysterious epidemic, observed in the 1920s, spread to many countries. Victorian women who never cut their hair, 1885. Benito Mussolini arrested for evading service in the Italian army at the age of 20. Switzerland, 1903. He was a socialist and loved playing the violin at that time. He later became a fascist. The demise of the largest dirigible, the Hindenburg, marking the end of the dirigible building era. USA, 1937. Nikola Tesla peers out of his laboratory in Colorado Springs, 1899. The floating church of St. Nicholas the Wonder Worker, the only ship in the Russian Empire with a fully functional Orthodox church on board, 1910s. The floating church of St. Nicholas the Wonder Worker, the only ship in the Russian Empire with a fully functional Orthodox church on board, 1910s. Players from the Toronto Maple Leafs and Chicago Blackhawks search for a lost expensive contact lens belonging to Jack Evans. Players from the Toronto Maple Leafs and Chicago Blackhawks search for a lost expensive contact lens belonging to Jack Evans. The office of a slave trader in Atlanta, USA, 1864. Drying polar bear skins, Northern Earth, 1930. Drying polar bear skins, Northern Earth, 1930. Responsibility for their work, testing a bridge over the Ob River. Engineers and builders stand under the bridge, Russian Empire, 1893. Mary Connors, the human nucleus, flies over the Avon River in Bristol, England, 1974. Mary Connors, the human nucleus, flies over the Avon River in Bristol, England, 1974. Such types of sleeping arrangements were especially popular in the UK in the 17th century. They were used for privacy and protection from insects and animals that lived in the house. Pets were not trained, and there were cases of attacks on sleeping people at night. These sleeping cabinets protected them and also kept the sleepers warmer. A Fine Receipt for Believing in God, USSR, 1974. A device to create dimples on the face. The device was designed to make dimples on the cheeks in the style of Marlene Dietrich, 1936. In the early 20th century, Tibet levied about 2,000 types of state taxes, including taxes on marriage, childbirth, the right to sing, dance, ring bells, and beat drums. In 1926, Tibet began creating an army and urgently needed money, and since all the usual taxes had already been imposed, the Dalai Lama introduced a tax on ears. Chinese Americans protest against scrap metal exports to Japan. Your children and wives could be next. This metal will be turned into bullets, 1939. John Pemberton created Coca-Cola to wean himself off morphine. While serving in the military, Dr. Pemberton received a chest wound. To ease the pain, he took morphine. The wound healed, but his addiction to the opioid drug remained. Pemberton decided to develop a recipe for a drink based on coca leaves. A U.S. Marine feeds an orphaned kitten. Korean War, 1953. John Minnick, the heaviest person in medical history. Astonishingly, he found a slim girlfriend, Jeanette. The young couple quickly fell in love and married, despite the 1,300-pound weight difference between them. Thank you for watching this video until the end. I hope these photos impressed you. Some may have made you angry, brought a smile, made you happy, or perhaps even caused some negativity. Feel free to leave your comments and stay tuned for the next part. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Bye.